these categories, Dr. Carson, are reductive in certain ways. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is I think part of the point that you're making in this book is that essentially these identities end up being divisive and actually are, you know, I think liberals see these identities as being sort of produced in reaction to white racism and bigotry. And I think your argument is that these identities are actually contrived by liberals to divide people.
Well, I don't know if it's just liberals who contrive them, but the fact of the matter is, I was doing an interview on NPR, and I was asked, why don't you talk about race very often? And I said, it's because I'm a neurosurgeon. And I got a very quizzical look. And I said, you see, when I take someone to the operating room, and I shave their head, and I open the scalp, and take off the bone flap, and open the dura, I am then operating on the thing that makes that person who they are. Right. The skin has very little with who that person is. And it's something that we have just allowed to define us, and it really has very little to do with who a person is.
Yeah, please.
So I agree with Dr.
Right, I think we all agree with that, right?
That we should be looking beyond the color of the skin, and I think the only place we differ is that we believe, I believe, and Demos believes that the way to get there is to actually do away with this myth that we can be colorblind. We have to be very realistic about where we are in this country, which is that we still have vast disparities predicated on race, and that in order to actually fulfill our promise, which is as a country that is a multiracial democracy, which is actually a pretty bold experiment on this planet, that we actually face it and take a little bit of American pride in knowing that it's actually quite challenging to create one people out of many different people, and we can't wish it away with the myth that we can be colorblind.
However, I think it really kind of depends on how you look at and analyze things. Do you look at things superficially, or do you look at things in depth? When I look at you or you, I'm much more interested in what kind of person you are and what your personality is. In fact, I found myself very frequently when we were trying to describe a patient, I said, see, were they black, were they white? You know, because it doesn't much to me.
Right, but here's the point. That is true of Dr. Carson. It is not true necessarily of, say, the predatory contract buyers on the south side of Chicago who spent 20 years targeting African Americans for their home equity and ripping them off as an explicitly racialized project of exploitation and predation, right? I mean,
it does exist. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. What I'm saying is we need to get to the point where we think more deeply. We're not so affected by superficial things.
Jose, you wanted to say